Hey everyone, Amia here from Resonance Astrology and welcome to my channel. Today we will be taking a look at Neptune's monumental ingress into the sign of Aries, and we will be also going through all the 12 zodiacs so you can see what it means for you. If the impatient rush and urge of the sign of Aries has already made you curious, then the timestamps are down below. You can go right to your zodiac sign and listen, but I still urge you to stay here as we will be taking a look at it in a more general way at what Neptune means moving into the sign of Aries, and this will kind of lay the foundation for what I'm going to talk about next. So stay here, but if you're super curious, the timestamps are down below. You're absolutely allowed to already go watch for your zodiac sign. So Neptune stays in a sign for 14 years, and the first time that Neptune slowly started to ingress into the sign of Pisces was around the year of 2011. And it was not until 2012 that Neptune fully ingressed into the sign of Pisces. So we have been dealing with this energy for a long time. And now Neptune moving into the sign of Aries is gonna feel like a completely new uncharted territory. If we look at it through the lens of playing a game and we look at our life as a game, then this is the point in our lives where we unlock a whole new world map. And a whole new world map is exciting and terrifying at the same time, because unlocking it is cool, but we're like, okay, well, we don't know what the climate will be. We don't know which characters we're going to meet. We don't know which animals we're going to meet, which beings we're going to meet. It can feel overwhelming, right? Because it's new uncharted territory. We don't really know yet. There's millions of options where we can head and go and explore. So this is what Neptune in Aries is going to feel like. It's going to feel a bit overwhelming, excited, and terrifying at the same time for us. And it's going to unlock this whole new story arc in our own lives, which is really the houses that we're going to look at in each zodiac sign. Essentially, each one of us is getting a new quest. The house that Neptune unlocks in the sign of Aries in our chart is like unlocking a new quest in this new world map. And we have been playing the quest of Pisces for around 14 years now. And I'm pretty sure that before we feel what Neptune in Aries is going to be like in our chart, we will actually much more feel like what Neptune's absence in the sign of Pisces is going to be like in our charts. Because we have gotten so used to Neptune and Pisces, and Neptune can often have this feeling of putting a veil upon us. And so now we most likely will be able to see the house that Pisces rules in our chart much more clearly than we have been able to see it in a long time. So we might gain much more clarity on what it means that Neptune is outside of Pisces than what it actually means that Neptune is in Aries, what Neptune is going to do in Aries in our own charts. That's what I'm trying to say. And a lot of people have also come up to me lately and telling me how everything is feeling so unreal currently, Amia. And I'm just like, I feel like everything is actually feeling much more real than ever for the first time. And I do believe this has a lot to do with Neptune's ingress into the sign of Aries, but not just that. It's also that Neptune and Saturn are getting very close together. Saturn is moving closer and closer to Neptune, and they are going to form a conjunction, but only in the year of 2026 at 0 degrees of Aries. So this is like a bit of the precursor. We're getting a taste of what Neptune and Saturn are going to do in Aries, but it's just like a taste. We're not getting the full story yet, because both of them will retrograde back into the sign of Pisces this year as well. And the sign of Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's much more real, grounded, and practical than it is in Pisces. So that's why I feel like Neptune into the sign of Aries is getting us much more clear-headed. And Saturn is also very realistic, like making us realize the real life in front of us. So what we are seeing and sensing as reality feeling so unreal is actually just us realizing how real reality is for a long time, and just like making us lift this veil and seeing things clearly for the first time, even though things have always kind of been there and been crazy, but now we're just like seeing it really for the first time, or in a long time for the first time. And also, don't mind me, I have some notes here on the side. I'm just going to refer to them. So I'm going to, sometimes switch back and forth, but I'm absolutely still talking to you. But I don't want to miss anything of what I want to say, because I want to give you the best information. And so to understand what Neptune means moving into the sign of Aries, we first have to look at where is Neptune coming from. And now Neptune moves outside the realm of being ruled and informed by Jupiter, because Jupiter rules over Pisces. So for a long time, we have been having a Neptune that is getting informed by what Jupiter is doing. And now we are moving into the realm of Mars. Mars is a much faster moving energy than Jupiter. Jupiter stays in a sign for about a whole year, while Mars only stays in a sign for about 2 months. Although, of course, when Mars is retrograde, it stays in a sign for about half a year. But even that is still way shorter than Jupiter's stay, which goes on for about a year. So this is a much faster energy. Neptune is getting information a lot faster because Mars changes signs a lot faster. And so this also means that Neptune has been influenced by Jupiterian themes, which are about our beliefs, our mental and societal structures, our impulses for growth and expansion, seeing the bigger picture. Jupiter and Neptune together can often bring this grand idealism, big dreams, grand pictures, big optimism, and like this more spiritual vision and purpose. And now Neptune will be influenced by more Martian themes, which are much more about a purpose driven in a more direct way, because Mars is about action, assertion, energy, passion, and the pursuit of actions and goals. So Neptune and Mars together can have this highly idealistic view on purpose. Sometimes in birth charts, we can see this combo with people who self-sacrifice for the greater good, because we can focus our actions much more on the higher and greater good and dying for a purpose, so to say. So it has a very crusader-like energy, actually, Mars and Neptune together. And Neptune also tends to put a bit of a balm on each planet it touches. Now, technically, Neptune isn't touching Mars directly. We will only really realize what Neptune and Mars together in Aries feels like once it happens, which is not happening anytime soon. But still, we can look at it through this lens. So like the Martian themes in our lives might get a bit of a balm. So this can lead to Mars feeling like it can go more with the flow and surrender more and take the path of least resistance instead of forcing and pushing, which I think is very important for Aries, because Aries sometimes likes to push and do things. So I think this will be very good actually for the Aries part in our charts. We can learn to go more with the flow and not force or put so much pressure on ourselves. And you know, I'm thinking of these people that have gone through many tough battles in life, and instead of going down the route where they become hardened and like heartless, and I mean, not heartless, but just like they close off their heart, instead of going down that route, they choose the path of softness and keeping their heart open. It's like a warrior with an open heart, you know, the warrior that chooses love at the end of the day, choosing gentleness over hardness. And yeah, Aries can tend to have this energy of not giving up and trying again and again. And with Neptune, like really in the best case scenario, this is like no matter how many times the world keeps telling me to shut down and keep my heart closed, I'm going to choose love over and over again. Like I'm going to choose love over fear, baby. So this is really, I like this part. And this is maybe the energy that Neptune is bringing into the Aryan parts of our chart. And what we also have is Neptune, the sign of Aries, can also give us like less attachment to our actions. Because sometimes we can be super attached to the actions we take and the outcomes, and Neptune can kind of have this like a bit of a detaching quality, which I think is very good, because instead of focusing on that we are doing this only for us and focusing on doing things for a greater purpose, again, this like crusader-like energy, we can actually get into a flow of doing things from a divine source, which then can inspire us to really go for our dreams and visions in a much different way and not be so attached to like, oh, I'm doing this only for myself. Because sometimes for some people, doing things for the higher and greater good can actually be much more motivating. So this is a really good thing that can also happen. And as you notice, I'm listing a lot of good things right now. We're going to get to the shadow side in just a second, but let me finish this off, okay? Because Neptune in the sign of Aries is not just not just all the good things, but I do think it's important to also say the good things first, because I know we like to catastrophize, and I definitely also want us to focus on all the good things that Neptune and Aries can bring into our lives. So when we think of Mars, we also always have to think of battle. How do we fight battles? Because this is just a Martian theme. And Neptune and Mars together, or just Neptune in the sign of Aries, which is ruled by Mars, can have a bit more like a passive resistance to this. And I don't mean this in a way that it's passive aggressive. It means just that Mars or Neptune fights its battle in Mars in a more resistance-like way, where it uses resistance as its power move. And I'm thinking of people that, you know, like Gandhi, for example. I'm actually not sure what he has in his chart, but just as an example. So people that use their own bodies, you know, Aries is very physical, to use their own bodies to form a sort of resistance on a greater level, choosing to fast to make a certain point. Or, you know, basically being like, I will harm myself first for the higher and greater good. And I know this is a bit of a gray area, because it's like, is it really good? Is it really bad? Like, how much self-harm is good for the greater good? And I think this is a very big question that Neptune and Aries is kind of going to pose for all of us in a global level, where civil unrest and everything is at an all-time high. Like, how can we fight in a way of resistance that is not too harmful for us and still stands a point? Because oftentimes we can actually make a good or make a point or do something by sacrificing ourselves in a good way, but how much is too far? So this is like the question mark here. And I guess, you know, also there's always an opportunity on a more personal level, maybe also grander level, to transmute, because Neptune like can blur things, which can actually lead to alchemizing and transforming and transmuting things. In this case, we could actually get the opportunity to learn how to alchemize our anger, which can be super useful for many of us, and especially in the parts of our chart where Aries rules, where we can often sometimes the parts where Aries rules our charts can be these parts that a lot of anger is there and we don't really know how to deal with it. Like, we don't really know what to do with it. It just like sits there and it either eats us up alive or we just kind of suppress it. And neither of these two options are good. In the best case, Neptune can learn or can teach us how to transmute anger in a way that leads to action, that leads to anger being a move of empowerment to create our dream lives. And directed to a higher and greater purpose, right? Like divine anger. That's Neptune in a Mars-ruled sign. And I think that's very good, because oftentimes, again, we are in a path of suppressing anger or just at the mercy of it, and it takes us over. And so this can be a very pivotal time where we learn how to transmute anger. And with this, we can also get into a bit more of the shadow sides and qualities of Mars and Neptune together, because I absolutely do not want to downplay that. Okay, there's definitely shadow sides to this constellation, like there is with any other sign and constellation. And I think what we also just have to keep in mind is that Saturn is also going to be there, at least in the first 2.5 years of Neptune also being in the sign of Aries. Both of them will be together, traveling through the sign of Aries. And this, especially in the beginning, can lead to this utter exhaustion and burnout, because Neptune and Mars together can blur the lines where we feel like there is no purpose, everything is hopeless, like, you know, atheism, but in like the worst way, where you just feel like, what is the point of me doing anything at all? And then completely landing in inaction. It can very much also lead to procrastinating things, but just because you feel like, why should I even do anything? So I do feel like on a personal and global level, it could really peak this. I mean, things are already peaking, right? I just feel like this is the tipping point regardless of what is going on. But it's really, I feel like it's going to reach a new tipping point with just like burnout rates and people really questioning, why the heck am I doing this? Like, why am I doing this job? Why am I working for this salary, this wage? And I think it's very good that we are questioning these things, because then real change can only happen. And I do think it will just get even harder. But then it's like, because I feel like globally, eventually, when there's so many people burned out, there has to be a change, because it reaches a certain tipping point, right? So I do think that Neptune and Aries is getting us to the tipping point rather faster than sooner. But exactly, on a personal level, this can also just feel like, yeah, I don't feel like I'm strong enough to face the challenges that life brings me, which again can lead to inaction and feeling of procrastination, not really wanting to do something. Neptune and Mars, or just Neptune in the sign of Aries, can also lead to us entering or starting to believe in a spiritual worldview that is very ego-driven without realizing that it's very ego-driven, and using spirituality as a means of rationalizing to, worst case, start wars on a global level. Like this idea of like a holy war. Oh yeah, we need to fight for this purpose. Like, duh, okay, but whatever. On a personal level, it could also just be like, you not realizing that you're hurting other people because you feel like, oh yeah, like I need to do this for this spiritual purpose. So we have to be very careful to not, act like complete asses, essentially, in the name of a higher and greater good and spirituality. Neptune and Mars can have a very kamikaze-like energy. I guess like a crusader would be a more positive type of how this energy can exemplify in our lives. The Neptune Mars in a more kamikaze-like fashion is maybe like a more negative way that it can express into our lives, where it's just like, sacrificing for a higher and greater purpose, but for what? And again, looking at this from a like battle point perspective, we can apply this globally but also into our personal lives. So Neptune and Mars can be like deceptive, like, so hidden enemies and infiltrations, like actions, unclear actions, like trying to what is that? I don't know the word right now. But like, when you make an attack that seems like something, but then it's actually another thing. I don't have the word for it right now in my head. I'm sure you know what I'm trying to say here. Or like, backstabbing, making somebody believe you're someone you're not. It's like a tiny agent type of energy, I guess. And again, secretive, harmful actions, enemy infiltrations. And so, yeah, we have to be careful not to fight dirty also in our personal lives, because, we can basically, essentially, the worst part of Neptune in a Mars world sign can be, like, if we look at anger again, it can be like, what happens if we let anger consume us and the desire for revenge dictate our lives? Like, who do we become? And what do we do with this power struggle? Because there's many people, in a sad way, that, do very harmful things for the higher and greater good. And we don't want to land in this route in our personal lives and on a global level. But I am afraid we will maybe see this more. And I'm also thinking of the song of 3 Days Grace, Animal I Have Become. It's just like it popped into my head when I was writing my notes here. And yeah, so I feel like we just have to be careful. We can easily slip into this torturous existence of feeling like we are at the mercy of our destructive and impulsive desires and thoughts. And it can so easily lead us to our more animalistic and instinctual nature. And this is really the internal battle we will probably also be facing in our charts, depending on where Neptune and Aries is going through in your chart. So yeah, these are kind of some thoughts that I wanted to share before we dive into the horoscopes. Some good sides, some bad sides. I think it's always good to list positive and negative qualities. And yeah, for most of us, it's never the extremes that are going to happen. It's usually some sort of middle road, but we need to kind of see the extremes and look at things from both sides so we can get a greater picture of how it might show up on a global or personal level. But yeah, with this, I think we can start diving into the horoscopes. And I just want to say, first of all, I suggest you listen to your rising sign. If you don't know your rising sign, absolutely feel free to listen to your sun sign. It will also work out. And again, the timestamps are down below. If you found this video useful for now, please already leave a thumbs up. If you appreciate the work that has gone into this video, subscribe to the channel. It helps out more than you know. And without further ado, let's get into the horoscopes for each of the signs. Aries suns and Aries risings, welcome to your Neptune and Aries horoscope. Now, obviously you could say you are the star of this reading since Neptune will be traveling your first house. But I think it's important with Neptune to think about where you're coming from. And now Neptune has been traveling through your 12th house for the past 14 years. And Neptune will also briefly dip again back into the sign of Pisces this year, so you're not fully off the hook yet. But there is an increased sense of changing your identity. And I think it's important to know like where you're coming from. You have already gotten a bit of a taste of these more Aryan themes in your life and your first house because the North Node was traveling through your first house over the past 1.5 years, kind of really amplifying a lot of your Aryan topics and also forming a new sense of identity. But now with Neptune, it's getting amped up in a completely different way. You are a Mars ruled sign, and now obviously it depends on where your natal Mars is located, but you are usually a sign that is very clear and assertive of who they are and what they want, and going after what they want. And now with Neptune, all of this might get a bit blurry, might get a bit confusing. Your sense of identity is shifting, and it's probably going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit outside of control, like you can't fully grasp who you are becoming. And this Neptunian process is really inviting you to kind of step aside or put aside everything you have thought you know of yourself before and enjoy the discomfort in not fully knowing where this is taking you. I mean, it's a whole new chapter that's gonna last another 14 years. So, you know, Neptune is not just gonna come in and change yourself all of a sudden. No, it's a slower process. So it will take time and gradually shift the way you are as a person, how you present yourself to the outside world, how the relationship you have with yourself might also be drastically changing. And your values, or just like your sense of like the image you have of yourself, because we all have this sort of image that we have of ourselves, might be changing. And it might actually be changing into like something of a more sensitive nature, of a more spiritual nature. As a Mars ruled sign, you're usually very focused on the more physical aspect of things. So, you know, going to hit the gym, again, depends on where your Mars is. Not every Aries rising is like that. But you're usually a very physical person that needs to do things. But now it's like, what if we get a bit more gentler? Or what if we start incorporating more spiritual practices into our daily lives and see how that transforms the image we have of ourselves? Because I know that the North Node traveling through your first house, a lot of Aries risings I know have been like really hitting the gym and working on their body and their body image and everything. And I feel like now with Neptune, this is changing, but not in a way where it's like, oh, you're not gonna hit the gym anymore or do any physical activities. God forbid, no, and please keep doing them. But it's more like, what if we also see divinity there? What if we see God when we are going on a run? What we see God when we are hitting the gym? So Neptune is kind of really inviting you to incorporate like the act of divinity and spiritualize your day-to-day life with you as the vessel wherever you are. And the thing is, Neptune has been going through your 12th house for a long time now. So you might have not really fully grasped your more subconscious topics and everything. Now that Neptune is leaving your 12th house, you actually might have easier access to face certain traumas or wounds or issues, especially psychologically disruptive topics that you couldn't like fully grasp beforehand. Also, especially because the North Node now is in Pisces, so it's kind of amplifying that part in your chart. So it's like this interesting back and forth you're having between your first and your 12th house. You're like, your present self and your subconscious self. And what's interesting to know about the 12th house is that initially the 12th house was the first house, and it has fallen away from the angle. This is why the 12th house feels so out of control and is our more subconscious beliefs and patterns. And so I really feel that you having clearer access now to work on these topics might then inadvertently change your self-image or the way you want to newly perceive yourself, your body, how you are in this physical realm and world. I feel like Neptune in the first can even bring somewhat of an ego death or a dark night of the soul. Neptune does this thing sometimes where like it gets worse before it gets better. And like the disillusionment that can happen sometimes is like we need that disillusionment to then see things more clearly, but it's always a bit hard to say with Neptune. And I think that's why, because you won't fully know what Neptune in your first house is fully like, but you will definitely feel what Neptune moving outside of your 12th house is like, because you will see the 12th house topics much more clearly now. And then this gradual identity shift will happen over time with Neptune moving through your first house. And so this like ego death or spiritual awakening that you might be undergoing might feel super uncomfortable first, because you're like, oh, I feel like I just formed a new identity and now I have to let go of this one too. But Neptune really reminds us that nothing is static. Like our identity is constantly shifting and adapting and evolving, and we cannot hold on to who we were. And Neptune will like slightly guide you to, Neptune will just fully guide you to experience this new, maybe even become a bit less attached to the identity that you usually put yourself in, because sometimes Aries in general can have a lot of pressure that Aries puts on themselves for who they are. And I feel like now this is going to get shaken up a bit, and you're like, okay, but what if the things that I thought I have to become, the things I thought I have to be, I can kind of put aside and get to know myself in a different way, maybe perhaps a gentler way. Neptune can serve as a bit of a balm. And so it's like, what happens if we are a bit kinder to ourselves? What happens if instead of like pushing through and having to achieve new goals and setting out to do new goals, we're like, what if there's like an easier route to doing that? It doesn't mean you have to give up on your essence, but it can just be a new way of enjoying your essence that is maybe not so harmful or stressful for you, but incorporates the way of you being in the world in a more like pleasurable way. And with Neptune traveling through your first, there might also be an internal urge to like explore your state of mind or your body, or like how your body and your soul are interrelated, like how your sense of self impacts the outside world, like how the way you think about yourself and your image shifts, and then how the world outside of yourself shifts. And now this can happen through multiple ways. Sometimes Neptune traveling through the first can lead to people being curious about trying substances to alter their state of mind, but it can also be like, I want to go and do more spiritual things like meditating to get to know a deeper layer of my mind and how I work, or I don't know, all sorts of things. It can also be just going into like a boot camp or something where you're like, I want to see how I am, and like spiritualizing that experience, like, who am I if I go and put myself into such a place? Like, who am I going to become? So Neptune might lead you to more explorations of who you are, how you can be if you put yourself in different settings, or if you change the way you look. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. But sometimes like doing a new style, like dressing differently, getting new hair can be very different. And at the core, obviously, Neptune can also just inspire you to do more Neptunian pursuits. So be more artistic, or get more into like healing modalities yourself, which is usually not so Martian. But there are a lot of, like, if we combine Neptune and Mars together, it might be doing like the beauty and the arts of doing some sort of craftsmanship that requires a lot of discipline or even wanting to go do some sort of rage therapy or something, because I think Neptune also invites you to look at how you fight your internal battles in a different way. How can you alchemize the internal struggles, pressures, stress, rage, anger that you put on yourself? How can you alchemize that in a way so it's actually fueling for you and you're not at the mercy of that? And you actually might even find that through artistic expression, like doing theater or something that's maybe a bit outside of comfort zone, can actually be a really good outlet to expressing this internal feelings. So for that, I really love Neptune in your first house. On the other hand, Neptune might also make you realize where you're self-sacrificing too much, where you're kind of playing the victim of your own circumstance in your life. And again, sometimes Neptune traveling through the first house can, in some sort of ego death fashion, lead you to being very pessimistic about life, because Neptune's going to soften that inner Martian urge of yours, which then can actually lead to you feeling like, well, what's the point of this? Because Mars ruled people need a purpose. They need something to put their energy into. And if they don't have that, they can get very depressed, pessimistic, and not really do anything because they don't have this driving force. And so Neptune might get you disillusioned with specific driving forces that you had so far in your life, but now you're stepping back and you're like, okay, I need something different. I need something that fuels me spiritually. Okay, it's like becoming a spiritual warrior and putting your energy into like a cause you truly believe in. So I think that's really what Neptune is kind of going to do. And again, the first house also has to do with your body, so there might also be certain like body issues, or you might not be able to see yourself clearly, which can give you a bit of a distorted body image, or the way you see your body is not exactly the way it is. And you know, sometimes this can lead to eating disorders, but it might also in your case be something where, like, you know, you're going to the gym and your body's actually super buff and fit, but you just don't fully see that. So that's sometimes also what can happen with Neptune traveling to the first house. I'm trying to give you a lot of examples so you can work with a lot of different things, because at the end of the day, it's going to impact everyone differently depending on their own birth chart. Exactly. Neptune in the first might also make you aware where you are self-sacrificing way too much and where you need to stand up for yourself a bit more. And this is what I have for you, lovely Aries. Let me know down in the comments if this resonates and your thoughts on the Neptune transit in your first house. Bye. Taurus suns, Taurus risings. Welcome to your Neptune and Aries horoscope. So Neptune and Aries will be traveling to your 12th house. And I know the 12th house is a bit of a dreaded place, and I'm not going to negate, like I'm going to basically give you the good and the bad and all the in between, because I think everything is always an opportunity. The thing is, you have already been gaining a bit more insight to your 12th house during the eclipses that were happening in the Aries Libra axis, because they have been activating your 12th and 6th house axis. So you did already gain a bit more insight, which is actually why the Neptune transit will be a bit lighter, because you already kind of gained a knowledge of your subconscious patterns or your traumas or the pain and hurt that have, like, some of your self-sabotaging patterns. So it's not like Neptune will make you super duper confused, but it might definitely shine and give you another light to look at things through this lens. Because the thing is, the 12th house is an aversion to the first house, and that's why oftentimes for the individual it's hard to see these 12th house topics. But because you already gained a bit of insight, I think the Neptunian blow, at first at least, won't be so bad, especially with Saturn there as well. It might actually make you very clear and firm on like what self-sabotaging topics you need to work on. And with 12th house transits, it's always a good time to work with some therapist or somebody that can like guide and coach you, because oftentimes it's things we can't like fully grasp on our own or see fully on our own. And sometimes just having an outside perspective of somebody that sees things from another limelight might be super useful. And you know, dear Taurus, you are a Venus ruled sign. Obviously, it depends on where Venus is in your chart, but you are known to be like a more easy to get along person and a more chill person, but then you have this Mars ruled 12th house, which is kind of like your hidden enemy, or something you like to bury, and that is why you oftentimes grasp or grapple with facing your more animalistic nature. I really feel like that Martian ruled 12th house is like what happens when, you know, the red flag gets waved at the bull and the bull isn't so peaceful in the field anymore, and it gets really annoyed and then starts seeing red. And it's this place where you don't really like to go, because I know it's a hard place. You would rather be peaceful in the field, munching on the flowers. But this Neptune moving in your 12th house might really make you aware of these. Or I guess what happens actually when you repress your anger. Like what happens when you start seeing red? Who do you become? So you might really grapple with this more animalistic, instinctual nature of you and try to find new ways of how to deal with that in your life. Neptune really gives you that opportunity to spiritualize that anger and learn how to cope with your inner demons and self-sabotaging behaviors in a different way, and perhaps even using anger as an opportunity to like move that anger, like move that stagnation. You're a fixed sign, which can sometimes get super stagnant. Even though, you know, I'm just thinking Uranus has been traveling through your first house the past like 7 years. So you have definitely been dealing with what it feels like for your identity to not be so fixed. And I know it has been super annoying for most of you Taurus risings. And so I feel like Neptune moving in your 12th is just like giving you even a further nudge on like doing this, but I feel like because you have had the Uranus in your first experience, it won't be so crazy. Like you're already built up to actually face Neptune in your 12th house. Like you're definitely strong enough to face that. What also can happen with Neptune, because Neptune gets a bit blurry and confusing, is that, and this is why I suggested working with a therapist before, is because you might not be able to fully put your own finger on the root cause and issues. Neptune also dissolves your subconscious boundaries, which makes it harder to run away from them, but you might also be getting more prolific dreams or really start working with your dreams, seeing how your subconscious mind tries to communicate to you in different ways, like how you are processing pain, more difficult things in life. And you might get some real good breakthroughs. It might also be a time where you want to work more with your dreams and dream images. And like facing your buried emotional complexes, it can be super overwhelming. And this is why sometimes the 12th house is difficult, because it's like it gives us the opportunity to look at our self-sabotaging behaviors, but it also gives us the opportunity to look at our self-sabotaging behaviors and like, that kind of sucks, right? It can be very overwhelming and kind of painful, and Neptune often overwhelms. And especially with Aries, I mean, we have also been having like Chiron in Aries, right? So it's really like all of us have been going back and forth with this inner wound of like, where are we abandoning ourselves? Where are we playing the victim of our circumstance, not being able to get out of? And so I think Neptune might like make you aware of how you're doing that. And because this can get overwhelming, you can be prone to land in some sort of substance abuse or start dismissing reality and lean into more escapism just because it's like so hard. And especially with Saturn also traveling there, you might get really hit hard with like, oh my gosh, this is how I have been kind of ruining my life for a long time. And this can really be hard to face. And so in a way, Neptune also going through the 12th house obviously depends on where you are in life. I guess most people that watch this channel are not people that would be sent to prison. It's just that the 12th house can signify time away from an institutions. But again, it does not have to be prisons, okay? It can also be hospitals such as psychiatries. If you are unwell or ill, this might be a time where you spent your time there. But it can also be going in a monastery or going on a pilgrimage or taking some time away off, going on a remote retreat where you really have time to get to know yourself better. And because Neptune often brings in these more spiritual experiences, it might really come from your own wish to go on a retreat where it's all about facing childhood trauma or something in a more spiritual way. So this might also happen, or be your internal wish. So yeah, you will be more prone to, you know, mental breakdowns and emotional instability during this time. So, and as a fixed sign, you hate that. But, you know, at the end of the day, you're a Taurus, you're a fixed sign. Depends on where Venus is in your chart, right? But essentially, you know how to keep yourself grounded. If you don't know, this is a very good time to learn these skills because you will most likely need them. And yeah, you're also more practical and material, but this time you will just be forced to go more inwards. And, you know, I feel like if you see this as an exciting journey to get back to yourself, even if it might involve some sort of ego death or dark night of the soul, it will ultimately lead you to have a much more better relationship to yourself. And when you really face these traumas successfully, it can build such a stronger foundation for you. Like if you become friends with your inner demons and stop running away from them, life gets a lot easier. But I know that facing them can be super hard. That's why please get help, seek help if you need it during this time. Neptune the 12th really cannot, like, you know, is not a joke. So yeah, I think one thing I added here at the end is, you know, just make sure to not suddenly find too much comfort in a fantasy or a delusion and mistake it for a fake stability that you yourself can only give you. So let me know, dear Taurus, how are you feeling with Neptune moving into your 12th house? How has this reading resonated? What have you been noticing in your life? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Gemini suns and Gemini risings. Hi, and welcome to your Neptune and Aries horoscope. So Neptune and Aries will be traveling through your 11th house, and the 11th house has all to do with your friend groups, your allies, the organizations you belong to, also your dreams and goals. And Neptune traveling through 11th might give you like an initial shock or feel like, who the heck am I even surrounding myself with? Because you tend to be someone that has a lot of friends, a lot of friend groups, associates themselves with a lot of people, and Neptune might really chime in and make you realize that you might not be aligning yourself with the people that are actually beneficial for you. Or you might seek more deeply spiritually fulfilling friendships or alliances, or just like the groups that you belong to. You might realize, like, I don't feel like I'm really fit in this friend group anymore. Like, I need people that are aligned to because the thing is, your dreams and goals will probably change with Neptune moving into the sign of Aries. And then naturally, when your dreams and goals change, you want to surround yourself with people that share those same dreams and goals, because then both of you, or each one of you, can uplift each other and you can work for the same vision. And so you might realize, like, oh, okay, now that my internal compass is shifting of where I want to go, I might have to align myself with different types of friends or friend groups. And you might also search for more Neptunian-like friend groups and organizations in your life, which means something like surrounding yourself with artists, poets, movie makers, people that are in the healing professions, these Neptunian type of themes. Or you might also want to join a more spiritual group or organization. But there is a bit of a disclaimer here, because sometimes Neptune, again, can be confusing, can make things seem better than they actually are. And Neptune moving through the 11th house can make you prone to kind of putting on this rose-colored glasses of not seeing organizations for what they fully are, which is why sometimes Neptune traveling through the 11th can make people susceptible to joining cults during that time, because there might be this organization that is dismantling themselves as something amazing when it's really not that. And this is so very Neptunian-like. So you have to be careful which types of new friend groups you are joining, because just because something seems good on paper and makes you feel super welcomed and it looks like this amazing thing, and Neptune has this super idealistic worldview, And this is kind of, you know, what cults are known for. They kind of lure you in with this amazing, beautiful worldview and community and family. And then you realize like, oh, things might not be exactly as they seem. So you have to be careful to not be susceptible to that. It doesn't also have to be a cult. It can just be any sort of organization or even new friend group. You know, you might not realize, like, it might be these more spiritually inclined friends that afterwards you realize like, oh, actually they're like super damaged, or oh, they actually like really abuse substances on the side, and you don't really want to land there. It might also make you more susceptible to just, you know, go down that route of finding people that you know, like you drink with or do something with, and then but all of you are like sort of like trauma bonding or something, and you don't really want to go there. Like, it might be useful to some degree to find that, you know, like a self-help group would for example be a good Neptunian trait. But this is always the thing, you know, it's like, if you find people that share your same wounds or traumas or things, you have to equally also have a lot of friends or groups around you that kind of put you outside of that state, because it can easily keep you stuck at a certain point. And you have a Mars-ruled 11th house, so you need this Martian people in your life that are full of passion, full of vigor, because they can then inspire you to do things. And that can be artists and other people. Like, ideally, Neptune traveling through 11th is really going to be able to bring you towards or together with people that can really inspire you to live a more spiritually fulfilled life and follow your dreams, so you can explore a new sense of direction and of yourself by belonging, like truly feeling like you belong. Because oftentimes you can be a bit all over the place and not really feel like you belong anywhere, and Neptune could really bring you a new sense of belonging, like truly belonging somewhere and feeling like, oh yeah, now I'm with this people that really align with my shared values and beliefs. But again, you have to be careful, because sometimes things are not exactly as they seem. Neptune is also very humanitarian, and at this time you might want to join more humanitarian causes. So working at charities, like working for these groups and organizations, or working with and for these groups and organizations, or maybe even starting your own group or organization where you can help other people in need, or like work at a shelter or something like that. That's also an amazing time to do something like that. And again, because Neptune blurs boundaries, you just have to be careful to not lose yourself in these groups, because sometimes we can get so attached to the causes that we are doing or the friend groups we belong to, and then like we lose our own sense of identity. That's something that can happen. But yeah, ultimately, Neptune will give you an urge to align your dreams and visions with a higher purpose, which is really a wonderful thing. But you just have to be careful to not become like unrealistic and ignore that good things take long-term planning. You just have to be careful to not land in the realm of having unrealistic dreams and goals. Like, it's super nice to expand your mind, but we just don't want to end up in this place where you end up hurting yourself by not being able to achieve the things you set out to do, which can very much easily happen to Neptune traveling in your 11th. But I think ultimately it will really serve you to find new goals and groups that suit who you are at this certain point. And it will probably take you into a very new direction with the people you surround yourself with. And the wonderful thing is, when you surround yourself with people, you never really know where you land or like what these people bring into your life. You might get completely different connections and start living in a very different reality, which can be wonderful, again, can also be painful. There's always the good and the bad. But ultimately, I really think this is going to be a good transit for you if you use it in that way. So this is all I have for you, Geminis. Let me know down in the comments how you're feeling, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Cancer Sun and Cancer Risings, welcome to your Neptune and Aries horoscope. Now, Neptune and Aries will be transiting to your prominent 10th house, which is an angular house. So it means it's directly linked to topics that are usually very important in our lives. The 10th house has to do with our career, has to do with our reputation, has to do with our public image and our role in success and what we deem as successful. And so naturally, Neptune moving into your 10th house might get you super disillusioned or question if the work you're doing is truly fulfilling to you. And if that's the job you want to continue to work on, like, is that the career you really want to be put on for the rest of your life? You might feel like if the work you're doing is unfulfilling, it's time to maybe completely redirect or change your job into something that is much more Neptunian and spiritually fulfilling. So working with arts and crafts, working in theater, music, doing something creative, or going into a field of more healing qualities. You need to do something that is spiritually fulfilling in your work. And Neptune in traveling to your 10th will make this blatantly obvious. Like, if you have not been feeling that in the work and career you're doing, you might really want to switch into making your career something much more spiritually fulfilling. Because if you feel like there's a purpose to what you're doing, your life improves so much. And you Cancer risings, like, you are already naturally pretty giving people when it comes to yourself. So now it's like, what if maybe I can turn these qualities into something that actually lends to a successful career and work? Like, maybe try really helping people in need, or if you really love animals, building an animal shelter. Neptune is very humanitarian and wants to like help humanity globally, spiritually. So maybe going into a field where such careers or such people are needed might be much more fulfilling to you. And I do also want to say there's like there's a lot of famous people that have Neptune natally in their 10th house. For example, Oprah Winfrey, she definitely is somebody that, like, you can clearly see that Neptune in her 10th house. The way she's successful is by inspiring other people to kind of become their best version of themselves. And she's also extremely generous and giving with all the things she has. Also, Princess Diana, John F. Kennedy, for example, also have Neptune in their 10th house. And so I feel like a lot of these people have this like soft, generous aura around them. And this is also kind of what propelled them into fame, because Neptune, I mean, if we think of celebrities in general, these are often people that have an elevated status, so to say. Even though they're just humans, we tend to put them on pedestals, and that really does something to us and how we are perceived. So Neptune traveling through your 10th house can actually give you yourself an elevated status or propel your career. It is a time where you might gain some sort of fame or become more famous or more well known. But I guess the not the question mark, sorry, I don't know what it's called. You know what I mean? The ding ding. This gives you essentially, like, most likely it's not like you're going to become like a huge celebrity or anything, but if you're doing social media or at work, just gaining some sort of more fame or recognition or stepping into a new role can be good. But sometimes when you let yourself be put on a pedestal by other people, it can put a lot of pressure on you on how you do things, because having fame by the public can be a wonderful thing, but you can equally enchant and delude people at the same time. And it's almost like, with fame comes greater responsibility, because it can like either make or break you. And there's a lot of things that you can do with having a sort of elevated social status or image. So be very careful of what happens if you are elevated or propelled into new heights, because again, cancel culture is not fun, and being very much liked by the public or the people can easily sway into, you being the Neptunian figure and like people turning on you, being like, oh, actually, we're gonna cancel this person, like that's not okay. So it's sometimes Neptune in the 10th can make it very hard for other people to perceive you as a real person with flaws and faults and everything. So you have to give yourself that grace that you are just human and not like misuse that new power if Neptune in the 10th does elevate you. And because Neptune blurs boundaries, you also have to be mindful of your public versus private persona, because you might get completely caught up in that persona. I'm also really thinking about social media. Social media is like this perfect 10th house place because it's the image we portray to society. And often when people go on our profile, they just see what we show them. They just see what we decide to present to the outside world. And sometimes we can get really caught up in this persona that we have created, and we can forget that's not all who we are. So that's what Neptune can also do. It can kind of like blur these lines and not have you have like proper boundaries between your public life and your public persona and image and your personal life, how you actually truly are. They can be, you know, they can coexist. They can also be the same person, but oftentimes it's just true. Like the way we present ourselves online is just never exactly how we present ourselves when we are alone by oneself. So make sure to like not completely lose yourself in the role, in the public role. And yeah, Neptune can definitely also give you a deluded fantasy about who and what you are and what you want to create in the future, or like what you deem as successful. So your dreams might get crushed or feel impractical or unrealistic, which definitely can also happen in the first 2.5 years when Saturn is also traveling through the sign of Aries, also in your 10th house. But you know, if you have prepared yourself for a role or taking up a new role, it might be a phenomenal time to like take this leap of faith and jump into this new chapter or new role that you want to take upon. So exactly. Can also be a time where you realize like the more like Aryan themes, like because first of all, Chiron has been traveling through your 10th house, and it can kind of make you see like, oh, where have I maybe been the scapegoat or sacrificing way too much for not a lot in return, especially in my career. So or you know, if you want to retire, you might not be fully realistic of how and when you can do that. So but it can also give you like this nudge to step up more for yourself and your qualities and what you can provide, because oftentimes you can be very humble Cancer risings and you'll have this naturally nurturing quality, and it's like step up for that. Like respect that this is a skill that not everyone has, and you should like get paid properly for that skill at work. So it might inspire you to be like, oh, I'm not going to be the victim or the scapegoat anymore in my workplace. I'm going to stand up for myself. So yeah, this can also happen, and I would love that for you. So this is all I have for you, dear Cancer risings. And yeah, let me know down in the comments how you have been feeling, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Leo suns and Leo risings, welcome to your Neptune and Aries horoscope. Now, Neptune will be traveling through your 9th house, which I actually kind of love. Neptune kind of really fits in with the themes of the 9th house, but of course there are also some negative sides, so we are gonna get into everything, okay? The good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. So you know, Neptune can initially, okay, let me put it this way. Neptune often like lifts the veil of the things we have been going through. It equally also can put a veil on things as well. And so if you have been having spiritual beliefs or belonging to like a spiritual community, or the way that you have structured your world with the beliefs that you have been having, can kind of get this really harsh reality check of like, is this really practical? And is this the way I want to continue to believe in the world and my experiences? And so Neptune initially might actually really challenge your notions of the structures you have built around your reality. And this can be kind of very painful. At the same time, it can also lead you to search for something deeper and something more meaningful. It can also really make you aware of how the beliefs of your upbringing have really shaped you. Like if you have been part of a religious or spiritual community in your upbringing, you might really notice how much it has shaped your worldview or how you operate in this world. And getting in touch with that can be a painful process, especially if you realize that it has been in a harmful way, not in an uplifting way. And you might want to start to search for a worldview or belief that actually fits a much more humanitarian and more spiritually inclusive way of being in this world. And this is also, the 9th house also has to do with like long distance travel and this pilgrimages. So you might actually literally go and undertake a pilgrimage if you want to. It's a wonderful time to do so, like a spiritual quest to go somewhere. And it might also lead you to search for a guru or a spiritual teacher in a land far away. Or it just also might give you the urge to explore yourself as like a citizen of the world, you could say, and just go travel around a lot and like find spirituality in these new places and new people. If you're into astrocartography, this might actually also be the time that you want to visit your Neptune line, because it might get more amplified during that time, and you might have new like spiritual, like much needed new spiritual realizations of where you belong and where you want to go to. Neptune might really inspire you to even move to a different place where like the way you believe in things aligns much more with your values and your spiritual worldviews. Maybe you feel stuck in the country that you have been living in, so Neptune might inspire you to move into a new place, or at least go study there for a while. And now, higher education can mean a lot of things. Oftentimes, the higher education in the 9th house might not have to do with like school in the system type of way here. It might just be like learning mundane daily things again. So maybe finding like a spiritual teacher that can learn like the things you cannot learn in school, essentially. Like the way you can get more access to like some spiritual practices that you don't get in school. But it might also want you to, like, if you are a student and if you're studying or deciding to study, or you want to pick up studying again, which is all very valid and true, Neptune might really inspire you to do so in these more Neptunian themes. You might want to go study healing arts and crafts, or go do theater again, or just something that is just more spiritually fulfilling to you. Just one thing we have to be careful of with Neptune in the 9th house is that it can have, like, if you go out and search for new spiritual beliefs, it can be easily like way more shallow than you think it is. And or you find like these gurus or teachers that aren't really the real deal. And so you have to be careful with that. Sometimes I see Neptune in the 9th house with people that go on this like spiritual quest, and they do, I don't know, like one yoga retreat, and now they want to become certified yoga teachers and teach yoga for the rest of their life, when they haven't even fully healed their childhood traumas yet or something, or don't have a proper understanding of what yoga actually is. They think it's just the exercise. Like, they don't even realize that, you know, the exercises are just asanas, and that's just one part of yoga. But anyhow, or, you know, these people that go on one ayahuasca retreat or something, and now they feel like, I'm gonna come back and heal everyone here, and it's like, no, okay? And this can sometimes happen with Neptune. It like gets very washed down, and you don't realize there's like much more to it. There's like a much deeper layer to what you need to learn and undergo through. So Neptune can actually lead you to like a shallow spiritual experience, and so we have to be careful with that. And again, also not falling for... The 9th house can also be susceptible to like cult leaders and things like that. You following spiritual groups that aren't the real deal, that you only find out later on. So definitely also be careful like which sort of teacher you end up joining or listening to or taking advice from, especially if it's more spiritual advice. Like, you have to just be really careful to not fall into some sort of savior complex, because Neptune is very humanitarian and wants to help people, but just because you've undergone one spiritual experience does not make you qualified to immediately become a guru or a spiritual leader yourself. There's a lot of processes that you need to go through first before you can step into such role. So be aware of that, you know, keep it humble if you can, and, you know, allow yourself to explore this new religions and worldviews and ways of experiencing reality without immediately succumbing to it as this one true path, okay? Allow yourself to dwell in it and see where it leads, okay? This is a long 14-year-old transit, okay, that will change you over time. So be humble with the process and what it will reveal to you. You will definitely have the urge and the desire to surrender to something higher and find a new relationship to God and divinity. Or you could also, land in the land of disillusionment, where it actually does the opposite, and you land in a very atheist, oh my gosh, I can't say that, atheist worldview on things, and things feel very purposeless. You're also a fire sign, so you need to have a sort of drive. You have a Mars ruled 9th house, so you have to have a sort of purpose into everything you're doing. And Neptune, and especially also Saturn in the first 2.5 years, where that's also joining your 9th house, can give you like this harsh reality check and make you feel very pessimistic about the things that you're doing, or not really knowing why you are doing them. So yeah, we have to be careful of that, and also be careful of like spiritually bypassing things in the name of the higher and greater good. So yeah, and if you're studying, this might be the time you decide to take a new study or course with something that like genuinely lights up your spark. Ultimately, this transit, I think, will lead you to finding better, deeper understanding of a worldview that is much more spiritually fulfilling to your heart. And you need to have something spiritually fulfilling to your heart, dear Leo. I know that. So I think this is the way to go. But again, just don't succumb to everything that shines like glitter and gold, because it might not be the actual goal or path that, you know, leads you somewhere. Or it might also be a time where you try out many new different things, which is also good. And yeah, because ultimately, you like the pursuit of studying and learning about things should feel true to a higher and greater spiritual purpose. And I think you will experiment or gradually start to find that more, even though in the beginning it could it could come from a crisis moment of not really knowing what sort of worldview to believe in anymore. But yeah, that's all I have for you, Leo risings. Let me know down in the comments how you're feeling, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Virgo suns and Virgo risings, welcome to your Neptune and Aries horoscopes. Now, Neptune will be transiting your 8th house, which is a tricky place, but I think to understand this, we have to understand what it means to have a Mars or Aries ruled 8th house for you. And okay, let's put it this way. The 8th house is an aversion to the ascendant. It doesn't form a major aspect to the ascendant. So this is why the 8th house is hard for us to see and to grasp. The 8th house is also a succedent place to the 7th house, which is an angle, which is something that brings stability. The 8th house is everything that is like outside of our control or feels outside of our control, especially when it has to do with other people. And this is why the 8th house can be this scary place where we feel like things are outside of our control. This is why it rules over our fears and anxieties, and can feel like this blind spot because we don't fully realize how these things are kind of really deeply affecting our lives or the way that we interact with other people. It's also similar to the 7th, that it can have a lot to do with projections, but especially projections that come from this deeper layer of our subconscious. Like it's a bit similar to the 12th house, but it's much more intrinsic subconscious beliefs, not in a way that it's like self-sabotage, but that it's like, how are we creating our reality towards other people by the way that we are perceiving them, which we might not realize how much anxiety due to past traumas or issues or wounds we are projecting onto other people, and how this is creating like very horrible relational dynamics, or because of the fear or like the resentfulness that we have been holding inside, how this is kind of reflecting back to how other people are showing up into our lives. So the 8th house can reveal a lot, and this can be very overwhelming, especially with a Mars Aries ruled 12th house. This can be a lot of things that have to do with how we have been neglecting our own power, or where power has been taken away from us. And trauma always involves power that has been taken or stripped away from us, and where we have been feeling or left feeling powerless. So this can be a bit of a tough cookie and a tough spot for Neptune to travel through, because it can make us painfully aware of how these experiences have kind of showed up in our lives, or kind of also like blur the lines where suddenly we get, you know, flashbacks or something like that. And I really don't want to downplay that at all, because this can lead to very extreme feelings of like dissociation or not really knowing where to go or something like that. or also very depressive states, even up to, you know, not really wanting to live anymore. And okay, first of all, again, I want to take this seriously, and I really also want to put it down there because the 8th house can really be not a joke. And if this is happening in your life, please go and seek help. It's so important you go and seek help through these crises moments, because inadvertently crises moments are a cry for help and an opportunity to change your life around. And in a way, oftentimes these crisis moments where we are like so vulnerable, it can be a huge spiritual opportunity to grow as a person, and it can be a spiritual experience in and of itself. Because we are so vulnerable, we are so much more susceptible to everything that is going on around us. So it can be a huge opportunity. But I just really don't want to downplay that, because first of all, I've had my own experiences with the 8th house, and I know it's not a joke. And I have been working as a psychiatry nurse, and I have seen countless people in the States, and yeah, it's not a joke. So I'm really, go and seek help if this is happening. I wanted to put this out there just so you know. At the same time, I also don't want to make you scared as if the 8th house or Neptune traveling through your 8th house is kind of going to ruin your life, because there's also a lot of good things that can come out of this. Again, crises moments can be beautiful spiritual opportunities to turn your life around and take your power back to yourself, which Neptune and Neptune and Aries can be all about. And even Saturn traveling through Aries in your 8th house over the next 2.5 years can make you like painfully aware of the traumas or things that got caused to you, that where your power got stripped away. And now it's like, how can I take that power back to me? Which can be very beautiful, but it comes from a place of hardship and harshness. And in another way, I also think that even though the 8th house reveals our fears and anxieties, can also reveal our secret and hidden desires. And they often involve other people, or what other people can do for us, or what we want other people to do to us. A lot of it has to do with like power play dynamics of like surrendering and letting go, of being in charge, of being in power. This is also why I don't really associate the 8th house with sex per se, but I associate with the act of intercourse in this power dynamic type of way, because we can also do a lot of healing in these types of relationships with people. That it's also contracts. The 8th house is about contracts, like you're contractually agreeing to experiment with another person in a specific way, and this can lead to very healing experiences, especially if that's where your power has been stripped away from. So it can be a very good time to, really experience spirituality in this way of how I can surrender and let go with other people. And because that's how you heal your relational wounds with other people that have happened in relationship, and a lot of them have happened because closeness distance was misused or mistreated, or so it can lead to have beautiful sexual, like transcendental experiences. Does not also just have to be sex, can also be in other ways, okay? It does not have to be sexual. It can also just be working with a body therapist or somebody where you can, or, just being more intimate with people in a different way. Like it can also be in other Neptunian ways where you do arts and crafts together with people, which can also be super, super healing. So it can also be in this way. And, like it might also just give you the urge to spiritualize your painful experiences, for it to be this catalyst of expression. Like, what do I do with this pain and this resentment and things that I have been holding inside of myself for a long time? So it might really be a catalyst, which I think is very beautiful. But again, it usually comes from like a painfully repressed place, and also why 8th house transits in general can be super challenging, but they can lead to very beautiful moments. Neptune is just a bit twisted, right? all the outer planets are, okay? All the outer planets are a bit like wild cards, where they can like be good and bad, and a bit like malefic and also a bit benefic. And Yeah, Neptune can be deceiving as well, so which is why you definitely also have to be careful of what types of people you let into your lives, because not everybody has the best interest in mind. The 8th house has to do with our like enmeshments and entanglements with other people. In a sinister type of way, when you have planets in somebody's 8th house, like significant planets in somebody's 8th house, can mean like you have a specific karmic entanglement, let's just put it that way, with this person. Like you're meant to go through something with this person. Can be good, can also be unpleasant at times. So we have to be careful of, people not... But I mean, sometimes it's inevitable that people betray us, right? But sometimes with Neptune, we just might be more susceptible to, people offering us more than they can give us. Neptune has to do with other people's resources, which can be money, can be physical, can also be mental and spiritual as well. Sometimes other people owe you things on a more spiritual or mental level. So there might also be like a Neptunian figure that enters your life and you get some sort of spiritual redemption of some sort of, where like you get a resolution through this person that comes into your life, which is a beautiful thing. Again, but can sadly also be the opposite thing, or you mistake someone for like this karmic twin soul flame when it's really not, and it's just like a painful experience, and it's not that, okay? So we have to be a bit aware of that. I think Neptune traveling through 8 will make you very aware of like what sort of victim savior complex you have inside of yourself, or how you like projected onto other people. On also a more mundane level, the 8th house also has to do about like just other people's money, can be taxes, shared resources with your partner, or like things that are owed to you in a money wise. So Neptune can also bring in like this grace and beauty, which is like, all of a sudden you get like an amazing inheritance. But again, Neptune is tricky there as well. You have to just double, triple check things, especially if it's like inheritances or the resources, like the shared resources you have with your partner, because things might not be super clear. Like maybe you get an inheritance and it's like not fully clear how it should be split up between you and your siblings or something like that. And it like looks good on the first glance, but then it's like overly complicated. And even just contracts in general, especially involving other people's money, make sure to be certain that you know what you're getting yourself into, because otherwise you might run into situations that, cost you your money or other people's money, and we want to avoid that essentially. So be mindful of that. And that is what I have for you, Virgo risings. Probably the longest one, but there's a lot to be said about the 8th house. So let me know down in the comments how you've been feeling, and I will see you next time. Bye! Libra suns and Libra risings. Hi, and welcome to your Neptune and Aries horoscope. Now, Neptune will be traveling through your 7th house. Yay or nay, I don't know. Depends on how you view things, but the 7th house is an angular house, okay? So, and it's opposing the 1st house, so it has all to do with close one-on-one relationships and like the other person. It does not just have to be a romantic partnership, okay? It can also be like a very close friendships or other people that you are more intimate with than the average other person, people in your life. So it could also be somebody like a therapist that you share more intimate details with. And now Neptune might like chime in and just make you like very confused and delusioned about who am I hanging out with? Why am I in a close romantic or non-romantic intimate relationship with this person? Might be the time where you realize, oh, actually, this is not really the friendship that I want to have with this person, or from a therapist-based level, might be like realizing, oh, this is not really fitting. I feel like this therapist isn't leading me anywhere. So you might get very, like, real suddenly, also because Saturn will also be going through your 7th house for the next 2.5 years, might be making you actually more real and grounded in what exactly you search for in a partner or in a more intimate connection, because you have a Mars Aries ruled 7th house, and this means you want like somebody that is like vigorous and passionate and all of that. Obviously also depends where your natal Mars is located, but sometimes you put up a front, dear Libra, and that just happens, okay? And it's completely normal. But the 7th house is also about the projections we have towards other people. And I'm just wondering, okay, you are already a sign that is prone to like over romanticize other people and put them on pedestals. What if that projection of perfection is actually the own pressure of projection you are putting on to yourself? And I feel like Neptune might kind of make that a bit more clear and obvious to you how you are doing that. Because oftentimes the perfect image we put on other people or the way we see them says a lot more about us than it says about the people, okay? And there's always two coins to Neptune, okay? On one hand, it might make you really realize like, oh, this is not the partner I want to be with, or like, this is not the person that I thought they were. On the other hand, might again do the other thing, make you put people on pedestals and feel like, oh, this is my Prince Charming or Queen Charming coming along the way to save me. Might make you very aware of your victim savior complex in forms of relationship, especially intimate relationships. Does not have to be romantic, okay? Can also be in friendships. These dynamics are also super prominent in friendships. But again, even in a therapy session, this can also, like, there can also be like a victim savior complex going on in your therapy sessions, okay? So it might make you like really aware of how these dynamics are playing out in your life and where you are maybe just projecting or other people are even projecting on you. You might be inclined to meet more Neptunian people during this time in your life. So surround yourself with people that are artists or healers or people that are very humanitarian. You might have the urge to really have these more spiritually inclined or based intimate connections. Like if that's missing from your life, you might really go on the search for that. But actually, I mean, okay, the 7th house has this funny thing where oftentimes it's not really that we go and search for that, but if there's a desire and urge for inside of us to experience that, it's like the universe just comes and chimes in and brings these people into our lives all of a sudden. And all of a sudden you might find yourself having somebody that is very Neptunian in your life, and that kind of even maybe gets you out of your comfort zone, because you can be very prone to, again, putting up this perfect front, blah, 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 blah. And this Neptunian person that might come into your life might really inspire you to like lift this veil. Might also inspire the opposite, but again, that's like the two sides of Neptune, and what can we do? So, yeah, one thing I would very much advise is to not get married too soon, like, because it's so easy to meet this perfect this perfect person during this time, and things might not be as they seem, and you might just want to give things a bit more time before you fully commit, before you get married, okay? It takes around 1 year to really get to know someone. You know, it's like get to know someone during all the 4 seasons and then maybe decide. Neptune might make you be really hasty with decisions of like, let's commit together, and we have only known each other for a month or something, or like already moving together, because Neptune blurs boundaries. So you might be doing things way too fast, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, we're living together now. I actually don't even really know this person, and we haven't ever discussed boundaries, and what now? And I would hate for you to land into this situation. This is why I'm telling you that this is a risk during Neptune in the 7th house transit. At the same time, it could also lead you to, if you're already in an existing partnership, but also if you're single, you might be really exploring how repressed anger or pent-up anger can be explored in relationships, like how conflict in your relationships can actually be a catalyst for deeper intimacy, because you, dear Libra, are a bit prone to not want to fight and keep the peace, and that is great and awesome, okay? But we have to be like careful here, because if we are not expressing what we are actually feeling, can lead to more damage in the long run, where somebody you know, it's like, ask yourself this. Would you be more hurtful if somebody just tells you what they're feeling in the moment, maybe after they reflected about it for one night? Or how would you feel if after half a year you realize that somebody has been like lying to your face and upkeeping this perfect image of a relationship when actually they have been like super resentful at you for certain things? And sometimes you can be prone to doing that without even fully realizing, not specifically because you want to harm the person, but just because you fear that conflict might make things worse. But what if conflict actually is a catalyst for deeper intimacy? And I think Neptune can really like you can kind of learn this through this Neptune transit to see that, oh, maybe like fighting with people can actually lead to greater intimacy and more spiritual experiences if I'm being honest and authentic and upfront with things. And, you know, this deeper, more intimate experiences in a more Neptunian way can actually also just be your relationship to God or something else, because divinity is also something that is like outside and that you can have a relation. I mean, it's also an internal experience, right? But it's like this as above, so below type of experience. So it might also inspire you to have a more deeper relationship with divinity or how God shows up in your life, and maybe even make you realize that the relationship I have with myself sets the base of the relationship I have with other people. And the love I have for myself and God or divinity kind of is reflected back with how I am in relationship with other people. And ultimately could lead you to learn to love in a more selfless way, which I think is a very beautiful thing. And that's all I have for you, dear Libras. Let me know down in the comments how you're feeling, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Scorpio suns and Scorpio risings, welcome to your Neptune and Aries horoscope. And now I'm here with you, okay? I'm a Scorpio rising as well, so I'm doing this reading for myself too. And Neptune traveling through our 6th house, okay, gonna be exciting, going to be tricky as well. Neptune, or at least the 6th house, okay, is tricky in the sense that it's in aversion to the ascendant. So it doesn't form a major aspect to the ascendant, which is why it's sometimes a bit harder to see. Like if no transits are going through the 6th house, it's a bit harder to really realize what the 6th house is doing. And the 6th house has to do with our like daily work, our daily routines, our health, our illnesses, everything in that container. But in all honesty, it's like in a more rigorous way, okay? Like the service and everything that people put onto the 6th house has to do with things that are not so much fun. I actually really like to call the 6th house the Sisyphus house, because if there's one house in our charts that feels like we have like the dishes that we just have to do every day, it's the 6th house, okay? And oftentimes the health and disease things in the 6th house are like the same coin from different sides, where it's like there's a lot of effort and exertion that you need to put in every day to live a healthy lifestyle and a healthy life and to not succumb to diseases and illnesses. And at the same time, diseases and illnesses can also really show us where we need to exert effort to get more healthy and fit, right? So Neptune traveling through the 6th house can show itself, or let me put it this way. If you have not been taking care of your health, Neptune traveling through the 6th is going to make this very obvious. And Neptune can show up in the way where it's like this mystery illness or disease that is popping into your life and popping up into your life, and you're not really sure where it's coming from, and you go and get these diagnoses and you can't get anything firm. Like you go to these checkups to the doctors and nothing is really working, nothing is really helping. So it might lead to some sort of crisis moment in how you have been taking care of yourself or not been taking care of yourself and letting your health slide, to then make you reassess, how do I go on about my daily routines to actually live a healthy and fulfilling life? And spirituality is a big part of that as well. Like, how can we spiritualize this mundane life? All these aspects that feel kind of mundane. And what actually often happens if there are certain diseases and illnesses in our lives that just seem like where we can't fully get to the root cause, it's often a time where we turn to a higher power. And I know that because I've been there, okay? I have Saturn natally in my 6th house. So I feel like a lot of the things that I'm sharing here kind of come from also personal experience, or like I can chime in with my personal experience too. Because I know how it feels like to have things going on in your body where you just like, you don't fully know where it's coming from, and you're desperately trying to search for this root cause of like this disease, like where did it come from? And Neptune can kind of be blurry, so we might not be able to fully see things on our own. And this is why we need to start going to different health practitioners and trying different alternative healing methods, because sometimes the conventional medicine is good and necessary, but it can sometimes it's just not fully holistic. And this is not to say that the like normal medical system is bad. I personally think it's good if we work with both of them, because both of them have their like shorthands. They can't do some things fully. So we want to treat our health in a holistic way. And this is really the time where you might be experimenting with alternative healing methods that you have maybe not tried before. So things that, again, might be more spiritual healing practices. It might also be, starting to do more spiritual practices yourself in your day-to-day lives, like incorporating every daily meditation, daily prayers, daily walks in nature or somewhere that just makes your mundane tasks be more spiritually fulfilled. And at the same time, like more modalities that maybe involve going to like a shaman or something, just somebody that has a different outlook on disease and illness that can help you transform or go to the root cause, which it's very hard to see in yourself. Okay, Neptune can really make things blurry and hard to see ourselves. And what can also happen is that we might fall into the trap of like following fad diets or landing into it can also lead to landing into this weird like realm where you totally go alternative, and then it just gets weird and blurry, and you're like doing this spiritual practices like or things that just have no real basis of why you should be doing them, potentially making your health worse, but you can't see that fully. So we got to be careful. You might also land in the hands of some practitioners which potentially can make things worse or lead you down a path that is actually not useful. So you have to be careful like how you involve yourself in the healing modalities that you are going through. And it might also make you realize how stress or the pressure that you put on yourself has been impacting you and your daily life. I mean, for most things, stress is just like one of the main issues essentially in life. And as Scorpio risings, we have our chart ruler Mars also ruling our 6th house. So we can easily over-identify with like the work and the jobs that we do. And sometimes we might not realize how much we are stressing or putting pressure on ourselves to like get things right there, or how much these things are impacting us, and we might like want to rush things too much. And now Neptune is asking like, is there an easier route to go through these processes? What if instead of rushing, you just take a step back and see how things flow a bit more, which might really lead you to also finding like a new sort of job that actually can be more fun, like the way you make money can actually be more fun. Or you might search for more like spiritually inclined jobs. Like you might take a job which is much more artistic, or you go into the nursing field where you're also practicing healing modalities. Can also be because the 6th house is also about like charity and service. So you might literally go into some sort of field of where you can serve your country, your family, the people around you, doing charity work, joining organizations that do some sort of charity work where you can really be of service. This might also really be a good time to do this sort of things, like help the people that are less fortunate, or like it might not be that disease falls upon you, but that you actually help other people that have diseases in their lives or some sort of shortcomings. So it's a good time for that too. And with this Martian ruled 6th house, I think it will also make you realize like the cause and effect of built up or pent up unprocessed emotions and how they impact your health, or how the stress that you're putting on yourself is really impacting your health. Because Scorpio rising sometimes have these things where like it's hard for them to actually process emotions. Obviously depends on other placements in the chart as well, but essentially they tend to hold on to things for a long time, and it can really be things like resentment, anger, guilt. And I like to tell this people all the time, like the worst food for your diet is resentment, shame, guilt. This does so much damage to ourselves and can turn ourselves eventually into real dis-eases in our body because we aren't processing them, because we are holding on to them, like from a really holistic perspective, just from my personal experience. So we really need to get very serious about how we are processing these things so it doesn't turn into some long-term health issues. So it might also actually be a good time to also get into some sort of like rage therapy or body work, where you really learn to process your emotions, your pent and built up emotions through your body so you can fully release and let them go, which again might also incorporate something like this alternative healing modalities, because processing your emotions is literally healing your body as well. Here in the West, I think most of us just have this view that and you might not even have this view, but it's just so ingrained into our heads, where we just, like, if there's discomfort and pain, the immediate reaction is to stop that and take medicine or something to just block it out and stop that. And while that is okay, you know, sometimes doing that all the time can really disconnect us with the symptoms that our body wants to tell us. And if we keep ignoring our body and the symptoms our body is trying to tell us, down the road, it can lead to much worse things. And so part of the healing process is feeling the pain, which can then lead to healing the pain. And the sixth house can really be rigorous in that way, that it forces you to like sit down with these topics and like really face them, like really face the root causes and issues of your diseases that have been going on. And it can also be that, like, I'm just thinking like, detoxing, like doing a full-on detox is also a rigorous process. Like changing your diet is also a rigorous process, which is very sixth housey in terms of like healing and health and illness and disease. And again, on a more mundane, like job-like level, again, as I already said before, first of all, Saturn is also traveling through your sixth house for the next 2.5 years. You will become much more sensitive to the stress that you are undergoing in your workplace or the job that you're holding. So you will be much more prone to burnout during this time. If you're not taking care of your health, you will realize it very hard, or it might even lead to actually a burnout, which then forms a crisis which then makes you realize, ooh, I need to work at a much better job where this doesn't happen. So, yeah, especially, okay, the thing is like Neptune makes things blurry, or like dissolves boundaries. At the same time, we have Saturn also in Aries, at least for the first 2.5 years of Neptune's transit, which actually reinforces boundaries. So it's like a weird push and pull dynamic here. But especially if you're somebody that is self-employed or doesn't have like clear working hours, you have to be super careful at how you are dealing with that, because you can so easily overwork yourself, and we don't want to land in the place where work starts to feel like something that is only in combination with your health getting worse. Ultimately, we want to learn how we can spiritualize this process so it can be a catalyst for healing. Like realizing ultimately that work and having a job can actually be a healing process in and of itself. So this is what I have to say. Actually, no, sorry, there's one more thing I have to say, just because it's also Martian. You could also learn how to like self-assert yourself in a better way at the job, like to really stand up for your worth and get the money that you're worth and get the job and position that you're worth. Like, you might realize like where you have kind of landed in victim mode, or other people at work might have been using you as some sort of scapegoat. So exactly, you might be standing up for yourself a bit more. And actually, also one other thing, the 6th house is also about pets, and so it might be actually a time where you get a new pet, and getting a pet can also be such a lovely healing experience. Pets can be such lovely companions and assistants in our healing journey, so it can also be a super wonderful time to, you know, experience the healing love of having a pet. So yeah, this is what I have for you, Scorpios. Let me know down in the comments how you're feeling, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Sagittarius suns and Sagittarius risings, welcome to your Neptune moving into Aries horoscope. And now Neptune in Aries will be moving into your 5th house, which is a more joyous place, and I think also a place that kind of fits a bit more sexily with Neptune together. And you know, I have actually just, I'm coming off from Neptune traveling through my 5th house for the past 14 years. So there's also a bit of like wisdom I can drop here. But essentially, I think it's a very interesting pairing. And again, I will be talking the good, the bad, the sad, the mad, everything. We will cover everything here. And so the 5th house is an interesting house in the sense that the 5th house kind of asks us this question of what constitutes a good life? What constitutes a life worth living? Because there's many things like our career and like our responsibilities and everything, but then like, what are these small nuggets on the side that make life actually really worth living? And that's the 5th house. And you as a Sagittarius, okay, you have this inner flame of yours that needs to be burning for you to have a fulfilling life. And Neptune might come and chime in and make you painfully aware of either that your flame has been gone and where you need to light a new one, or where you have actually been kind of a bit more like irresponsible with things. Neptune is always like a double-edged coin, but really every transit can be, you know, there's always the good and the bad that can happen. And in a good way, Neptune traveling through your 5th house can really lead you to, you know, the 5th house is really about like our hobbies and our leisure time and what we do for fun. So you might like undergo more, like you might find new hobbies that really light your spark up again, and like work together with people in more creative ways, find more spiritual fulfillment in the creative work you're doing, get back into art, photography, like hobbies that you thought you've lost, like now you're getting back into them. And at the same time, we have to be careful with Neptune, because it can always also lead us down the path where now we just focus on the good and we get like a bit irresponsible because sometimes Neptune can just put this huge highlight where like we ignore the fact that we actually do also have responsibilities and things we have to do, and we can kind of get lost in the sauce. At least that's sometimes how Neptune in Pisces traveling to my 5th house has sometimes felt like. And the 5th house is also about like romance and dating, and this horoscope is not really, it's more about Neptune, right? But I cannot talk about it with not mentioning that Uranus is moving into Gemini, into your 7th house, your Sag risings or suns. So there's a big emphasis on like completely revamping your life around how you're having fun, how you're dating, and how you're having relationship with other people. And it might really like turn your head upside down and make you explore things which you like to explore. So it is kind of you just coming back to your natural habitat. I think in its essence, it can really be an uplifting transits from both Neptune and Uranus in your chart. At the same time, and that is, you're also prone to that just because you're a Sag rising and because you're ruled by Jupiter. But you have to be very careful to not land into this field of like it can easily turn, like the way that you are negating your experiments and like maybe dating or creativity, you might not be fully realize how this is maybe hurting or harming other people. Like you might not realize that your spiritual quest for fulfillment is actually hurting other people, and not everyone wants to join you, or not everyone has this open idea of love and experimenting and everything. You know, Uranus traveling to the 7th can really be a time of exploring polyamory or open relationships, or just, you know, not the norm, I guess. And you like to explore anyway, so I guess it's really a good thing. But again, we have to be careful that just because you are in this land of like, oh, we're all one and love is everywhere and I'm feeling it, maybe not every person around you is feeling that, and so you might hurt people in the name of spirituality, and I would hate for you to get there. So that's why I'm, you know, saying this might be a bit more careful. And again, you could also be super lavish with everything, with your expenses, and suddenly you wanting to explore yourself and your hobbies just takes the center front, and again, you like ignore the responsibilities you have in your life. It can easily also land you into this like starving artist archetype, where like this becomes the most important thing, and other things like maybe investing and saving for your future becomes like less relevant when it totally should be freaking irrelevant. So yeah, make sure to like not ignore the responsibilities for the sake of fun. Or just fun can easily take like a sour turn, because Neptune like dissolves our boundaries, and again, you're an explorative sign, you're naturally curious. So it might be a time where you're like, oh, I want to go out and try psychedelics, or I want to go out and, I don't know, try a threesome or something. But just like be aware that like it can easily turn sour, essentially. That's what I'm saying. Because Neptune also has to do with kids and children, and yes, if you don't have children, it can absolutely also be like you exploring the creativity you have lost since you were a child. Can also mean that you know, get into an unwanted pregnancy, so to say, and I would not want that to happen to you, so do be careful. You know, and this can easily happen at like night outs like this, where you're like, oh, I just want to have fun and party, and like what, next day you're here and you have a positive pregnancy test. We don't want that. We don't want such surprise, okay? So be careful with who you are engaging. People could be a bit deceptive. You know, the 5th house is about romance. So you could easily over-romanticize people and relationships. You know, like fall in love on the first night with a person, or somebody like kind of makes you have rose-colored glasses. So be careful to not immediately like commit to these people, because there might be like it just might be a bit wishy-washy. Like you might be wishy-washy, the other person might be wishy-washy about what they need, what they want, and it could just land into this like weird situation where at the end nobody really knows what they want and nobody's really reliable, and it just gets like super confusing for on both ends. So again, on the topic of kids, if you are pregnant, willingly, hopefully, the pregnancy itself can be a super spiritual experience, you know, like birthing a child can be a very Neptunian experience in and of itself. And you might really find like your inner artistic or more spiritual side by like having kids. Like they might serve as an inspiration for you to get in touch with these things, which is a beautiful thing. Or even if if you're the father, might also give you to, even if you're not the one carrying out the pregnancy, or whatever, like if you're the partner of the person that is pregnant, I guess, it could also connect you deeper into like connecting with your inner child. And yeah, so like it could, and if you have kids, could also lead to a deeper relationship with your children in a more like artistic, spiritually inclined way, which is super beautiful. Your kids might also be undergoing some sort of Neptunian transits themselves, where they get more like spiritually curious or like want to express their artistic sides. So exactly. Ultimately, Neptune in the 5th house creates like wonderful new opportunities for you to express yourself and expand your consciousness and like put your creative visions to work and have more joy and fun in your romantic life and ventures. And again, in a more negative way, you can just have to be careful about like romantic scams or like people trying to scam and deceive you through love, or even getting into gambling addictions and unplanned pregnancies, or landing in some sort of, again, starving artist like syndrome. So yeah, but it really does not have to be that way, okay? Like, I've had Neptune transiting my 5th house for the past 14 years. I never got any unplanned pregnancy. I never became like a starving artist, and I never succumbed to a gambling addiction, nor did I ever really undergo a love scam or something like that. So it does not have to happen. I think ultimately it's really good to get you in touch with your more artistic side and spark this flame and build a constitution to have a life really worth living. Get in touch with your hobbies and everything. And again, ideally through the things that you already pursued and did as a child, because they can give us so much insight in what we need in adult life. Like, your child self is so smart and you already knew what you like doing. So it can be a beautiful time to get back to these hobbies that you might have lost touch with. So this is what I have for you, Sagittariuses. Let me know down in the comments how you're feeling, and I will see you next time. Bye. Capricorn suns and Capricorn risings, welcome to your Neptune and Aries horoscope. Now, Neptune and Aries will be moving into your 4th house, which is an angular house. So it has, this big impactful life topics. And the 4th house is all about our home, our family, our lineage, our ancestry, the lands really also on where we live. So Neptune will really, give you a new insight into how family or upbringing in your homeland and ancestors have shaped you, potentially making you realize what types of traumas, diseases, but also like good things, everything that has like been passed down to you through your lineage. It might make you like really aware of like what happened, like how the experiences of where you came from has shaped you and you made you the person that you are. And you might start seeing like a greater spiritual purpose in connecting to your ancestry and your family lineage and asking deeper questions about where you came from, how you ended up the way you ended up now. Might be a time where you actually start speaking to your family members that are still alive, like asking deeper questions while they're still here of like, hey, how did you experience this growing up? Or like, how was that to you? Like, how did you experience that? Might be a really interesting time to go down that route. Might also make you realize some very painful childhood memories that come up during this time, or like you get like really aware of like the emotional complexes that shaped you and how they impact you and made you the person that you are today. With this Martian ruled 4th house, I wouldn't be surprised if you like look back at your family history and you realize what damage, repressed anger or rage has left in your family. Especially if there was like some sort of violence, some fighting, or even addiction, which would be like a more repressive form of dampening resentment and anger. Like to tolerate this wounds and like how that shaped you, if that has been your experience. Like you might realize just how much these things actually affect you or made you, or like affecting you in the present moment, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So you might have like this urge to like grieve or feel like you need to redeem yourself, and you might easily give into like some sort of Neptunian savior complex where you feel like, oh, but like I mean, okay, first of all, Capricorns, you already are prone to carrying the freaking weight on your shoulders. But this might lead into a whole new level of where you feel like, I need to solve this problems of my family lineage. I need to carry that weight and like transform the pain, the traumas, the patterns, like it rests upon my shoulders to do this so we do not repeat the cycle again. So again, just remember, you do not have to do this alone, okay? Work with a therapist or even like somebody that does maybe family constellations or is able to like get you in touch with your ancestry in a more deeper way. You might also have like the urge yourself to create a family, or again, talk to all your relatives that are still alive, like search for photos, like look at all the family albums. Or what might also be interesting, actually, if you were born into a country and you moved away from that country, or you were born in a country but your parents are from a different country, or your lineage is just from a whole different country, it might be a very interesting time to explore the lineage of where you came from, like the ancestry of your homelands and the roots, and especially their like spiritual practices. Like you might feel like you really want to connect to, like, I don't know, let's just say you've, I don't know, you're in the US, but you've been born in Brazil, or your family is from Brazil, and you might really get this urge to go, like maybe even travel there, travel and connect to the locals and the people there and learn their like language, because you might get this feeling of like, oh damn, I really missed out, like something always felt spiritually unfulfilling to where I am around me, and I really want to connect to my roots and ancestors. So it might also actually be a time where you set up some sort of altar where you honor your ancestors. Might even also be a time where you can work with like a psychic to get in touch with your ancestors and ask questions or something like that. And again, just be careful that you don't land into this super sacrificial mode to your like current family members, because okay, maybe Neptune can also exemplify somebody in your family being sick or needing your help, and you're usually the first person to rush to help and be the responsible one. So I see this again as like a coin from two sides, because at the same time, if somebody is maybe sick in your family and you do end up like, because it is a sacrifice, right? Like if you actually decide to deeply care for somebody that is sick in your family, you do sacrifice parts of your life to that, to be like in service to that person. In a way, this can itself also be a very beautiful and spiritually liberating experience, especially if you feel like that is some sort of way where I can repay some sort of debt or end the family cycle. So I don't want you to feel like you don't have to do that. Like if you feel like doing that, definitely do that. But at the same time, if you have been somebody that is constantly there for your family, it might also be time to reevaluate how you can take things a bit more into your own hands and establish them. The fourth house actually also has a lot to do with like death, or at least like the ending stages of life. So if it's not coming from a family member, you might actually start to really ponder, like, let's just put it this way. You might maybe see family members and you're like, I do not want to land like them. Or again, you dig into your family history and you're like, okay, wait, 50% of my family died from addiction. I don't want to go down that road. So you might really ponder, like, what do I need to do to not land there when I'm old, when I'm at the end stages of my life? Or you might even decide to work with elderly people or like an elderly people home, or even go like down this more like healing road where you want to become like a death doula, like assisting people during their dying process, which can also be a very spiritually liberating process in and of itself. And like make you get in touch with the topic of death without it directly being about you. I'm not sure if I put it right, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. The fourth house obviously also has to do about our literal house and our home. And so and also your inner private life, like our more inner private life and who we are when we are at home behind closed doors. So you might want to explore your inner life in a deeper sense. And like, this is also a good time to pick up meditation practices or like awareness practices, just to get to know yourself better. And you might also get the urges to actually make your house and your home much more Neptunian, you know, where it's like, let me set up artworks, let me make my home more comfortable and beautiful to live in. Neptune can also actually make you prone to wanting to live near a body of water, or just having the urge to have a home that has a bathtub or something, which is super interesting. One thing I would advise though is that, because Neptune can sometimes have these rose-colored glasses and not make us see things clearly for what they are. So if you are actually moving during that time, be aware, or like double, triple check things, contracts, or the house or apartment that you want to move into, that it is really the thing that you are buying, because people could be deceitful. You might pay more than it's actually worth, or the house or apartment or whatever might not be as good as it's promised to be, and it might lead to some really sour surprises when you actually move into that place. That can so easily happen with Neptune traveling through your fourth. And what can also happen, especially if you like get in touch with your ancestry, is that you could get the sudden urge of, oh, I want to move back to my homelands. And while this is not a bad thing, it can also just lead us to having these super rose-colored glasses of, oh, everything will be so much better if I just move back to my homelands. Or it doesn't even have to be your homelands. It could be just a new country that you feel connected to. And then you move there and you realize, oh, things are actually not as great as I pictured them in my head. So, this is also something that can happen with Neptune traveling in the fourth house. And as in the house, sometimes it can actually lead to problems with like water issues in the house, actually. So exactly, yeah. I think this is everything I have to say. So dear Capricorns, this is what I have to you. Let me know down in the comments how you have been feeling, what's up, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Aquarius suns and Aquarius risings. Welcome to your Neptune and Aries horoscopes. And now Neptune and Aries will be traveling through your third house. I think the third house is super interesting, especially if we compare the ancient and modern meanings, because there's like a connection you can see there, but at first glance it seems very different. And in ancient times, the third house really, like, it was referred to as the goddess, okay? And it was really about the local nearby environment, which is still holds true in the modern times as well. But this is why also, why it's associated actually with neighborhoods and neighbors. But it was also about our daily commutes and like the rituals we did. In ancient times, these were based around the village, often, you know, so where people came together in their morning walk to like pray at the temple or their shrine, which is often really how the community stayed alive and how people kept in touch with like family members or their neighbors, and how they got to, like, how they kept the village connected essentially in a community-based way. And I think also one of the reasons why the third house, it's one of the reasons, not the only, but one of the reasons why it's also signified with their siblings, because oftentimes in ancient times the siblings didn't move far away, so this is also how you stayed in touch with the siblings, or again your family, like your close and loved ones, because the fourth house is like your house, but then the third house is like the fish tank environment. So it's everything that is outside your house, everything that is near and dear, local, right outside your house, all the happenings and gatherings. Neptune moving through your first house, or just generally third house transits, often involve us wanting to explore the things around us way more. And this is especially true if you have like lived in a certain place for a while and you never actually got in touch with what is happening around you. So you might want to get involved in, you know, exploring the restaurants around you, exploring the gatherings, the bars, the people, the gatherings around you. especially even in a more spiritual way, you know. We don't really have these types of things anymore, even though you could say things like going to Sunday church, which are still happening today. You know, I also live in the village. We have a church here. I don't go to the church, but there are people that gather at the church all the time. It's definitely still a meeting pot. But we also, for example, have a local market that just started, because it's not active in the winter, but like a local market where all the locals, like farmers and people also in the nearby villages, like come and they have their like local produce and everything, and I go buying my food there all the time. This is also a gathering spot and a gathering place. Or like, you know, the culture, like usually in villages, but also in big towns and cities, you have like districts and things, and there's always like this cultural place which is responsible for events and gatherings and happenings. And Neptune moving through your first house might make you want to explore joining maybe such a local group to get more involved into, like with the people that you are essentially surrounded every day, but you don't even really know. Like how many of us actually even know our neighbors or the people in our village? We just pass by them every day. So Neptune in the third might give you a bigger urge to really feel like a more spiritually connected sense to the people around you and where you're living, to the village or even the city districts that you are a part of. Might also make you want to join a more spiritual community or hobbies, you know, like maybe starting or going to like a local yoga class. Might also make you want to join the church or something, for all I know, whatever spiritual path that you want to follow. At the same time, again, Neptune can be a bit deceptive. You might not realize that maybe you are joining something of a cult, or the organizations you're joining seem better than they actually are on the surface, and actually there's a lot of problems involved beneath, or the people might not be as great as they seem. So definitely watch out for that as well. Because Neptune dissolves boundaries, it can also lead you to like if you're overly involved in the local community or with anything, you can easily lose your identity, or feel like you're just sacrificing so much for the people around you and like you kind of forget yourself. This can easily happen, especially like if you join spiritual communities and stuff like that. Neptune through your third might also make you aware. No, let me say differently. If you are already involved in a sort of spiritual group and community, or your local communities, you might actually realize like, oh, I don't really like the way this shaped my beliefs and views, and I want to actually distance myself and take myself out of this because it's not really fully aligning with the way I want to be living and spending my life anymore. Might lead you to move to a different neighborhood or search for a different group you can relate to and the way you can be active. You have a Mars ruled third house, so you really want to feel like you're doing something for or doing something with the people around you, okay? So make sure to join organizations or be in neighborhoods that actually really feel fulfilling and not make you feel like an alien, okay? I know you're prone to already feeling like an alien, but you also get to be in environments where you feel welcomed and like you actually fit in. But again, Neptune can do this coin flip where you either realize you don't fit in, you want to move to a different place, or you realize like, oh, how can I actually create an environment where I can fit inside better? And Neptune is also very humanitarian, so you might actually really want to organize or be in organizations like local organizations that really do something for the locals. Like you really want to engage yourself to create this local life and make it fun for the village, like make it fun for the other village people or something like that. On a more personal level, the one interesting thing is like the third house also has to do with our daily routines, but the sixth house is like a lot more rigorous way of going on our routines and like the things we must do to be healthy or whatever. The third house is a much more joyous way of doing our routines. That's why it has a lot more to do with rituals and the small and tiny things we do to make life fun. So you might actually really want to also find more spiritual ways of being by incorporating small rituals through your daily lives. Might be through daily prayers, might be through daily meditations, might also be through commuting, because the third house is about our local commutes, like our short-term commutes. And you might realize that, oh, there's like a new way or pathway I never traveled to before. And you might find like this really new, beautiful places that are beautiful, and you have, where you can also have like spiritual experiences with, sometimes you find these places in nature where you're just like, wow, this is like a divine place, and I just feel so safe and good here, and I can literally relax. Like I get spiritual downloads here. At least this is what happens to me sometimes. So Neptune might lead you to find these local places that get you to have such things. Or you find like a local shrine or something that's super beautiful, and like you start going there every day. So definitely still exists, and then the third house also has to do with like our thinking, our communication, and it has to do with our senses. It's not like our body, which is the first house, or our health, which is the sixth house. It really just has like to do with the senses. And so in a way, Neptune can kind of distort our senses. So we have to be careful that what we see, what we touch, what we feel is like actually real. Like it might kind of distort our reality. We might be able to, or like it's easier to fall into like this weird fantasy world, and you might not even realize how you have fallen into that fantasy world, or that the way you maybe see something or sense something is very different from the other people around you. So be careful of like just the thoughts and the way that you're thinking, and how this shapes your reality. Again, you might become super aware of how the spiritual beliefs of your upbringing or your community have shaped you in good and bad ways, and how it's impacting the way you're living your daily life. So yeah, if things become too overwhelming and you feel like you can't fully like trust your senses anymore, also again, definitely good time to, I don't know, work with some sort of therapist or something. Just somebody that can like ground you more if you are unable to ground yourself. So this is what I have for you, dear Aquariuses. Let me know down below how you're feeling, and I will see you next time. Bye. Pisces suns and Pisces risings. Hello and welcome to your Neptune and Aries horoscope. Now, you dear Pisces, you have been having Neptune traveling through your first house for the last 14 years. Long time. And this probably completely changed your a sense of identity and of self, and like the image you kind of have of yourself. So it will be really interesting what happens once Neptune moves outside of your first house. I think Neptune moving outside of your first house is way more interesting right now, at least in the beginning, than what Neptune is actually doing in your second house, because you might actually have or get like a much more clearer sense of your identity than you have for a long time. Like you might not realize how this Neptunian veil that was probably put over you has actually impacted you, or like the image that you put on yourself, because you might have gotten yourself into this like very spiritually dreamy image, which is also very much like you. But I feel like now you will realize just how much Neptune has actually been impacting you. So Neptune's absence from your first house will actually be so interesting to see and witness and go through. So, and this is also important because of the second house, because the second house is like in direct relation to the first house, because it has to do with our own resources and what we cultivate and gain during our lifetimes, and usually also what we end up making money with. So it's interesting because in a way you're like coming out of this bubble of how you have been perceiving yourself and how other people have probably been perceiving you, so which might lead to like a new identity shift. And now it's like, okay, but what do I do with that? Because maybe the way you have been making money or putting your talents and abilities to use might need a shift. In your case, maybe something that is much more passionate and vigorously active, which is very like Martian. You might actually want to do more Martian pursuits in your life and be more assertive, actually like charge what you're worth, essentially. Like, you might realize, like, oh, I need to really step up and have some self-respect on my knowledge and my talents and my gifts that I bring out into this world, because I know, they're Pisces, you can be so generous, but it's like, okay, we need to also be realistic in how we make money and save up for our future. So I urge you to, like, not be overly optimistic when it comes to this, okay? I do think Saturn moving through your second house also, at least in the first 2.5 years, alongside with Neptune, will make you much more grounded and realistic in how you need to approach these topics in your life that have to do with how you're cultivating money, how you are charging people for your services, or just how you are putting your creative talents and abilities to use. Like, you need to take it more seriously, essentially, because Neptune through your second house can have this, like, overly optimistic way of thinking, like, oh, everything is just gonna, like, be taken care of, and, like, I don't want to think too much about the future. And it's like, we need to think about the future just a little bit here, okay? We need to actually be a bit more realistic with, what we actually are doing with our income and our money and our talents and gifts and all of these things to actually create something. And this is really annoying because good things take time and patience. And I know people hate to hear it, but that's just, like, the reality. And we have to really get in touch with this reality right here. So you have to be really careful to not get into too magical ways of thinking. Like, there's a gray area between fully trusting that you're always going to be taken care of in some sort of way and being, like, irresponsible with how you are dealing with your finances. And you need to find out in which one of these places you are landing. Neptune can make things blurry and a bit hard to see where exactly you're landing. Neptune can also sometimes be a bit, like, of wishful thinking, which is often when people get into this realm of trying to spiritually manifest things. And I'm not saying, like, this is fake, but sometimes spiritually manifesting things can, first of all, if it starts working out, lead you to some sort of, like, God complex where you feel like, oh, if I can manifest this, I can just manifest everything. And the universe, has a good way of humbling you eventually. So we need to be careful to not land into that route. And at the other, the other part of that coin is essentially, like, being so hard and adamant about, like, I need to manifest this, and, like, not fully letting go, and then, like, not realizing that the universe probably has better plans for you and how it's going to make things work out. So there needs to be, like, a good trust and faith into co-creating with the universe, especially when it comes to life, because the second house has a lot to do with how we are creating and facilitating our life, especially through us, because it's, like, based from the first house onwards. And again, what we need to be careful of here with Neptune as well is, not falling for, like, get-rich-quick schemes, essentially, which can easily happen. Like joining an MLM or something like that, where it's just like, no, be careful. Like, be careful signing contracts that involve, like, your own money and how much money you have to give, because you might be scammed or something. Could also be a dangerous time to get into, like, gambling or, like, people deceiving you, again, in form of, like, scams where you lose your money or possessions. We don't want to get you there, okay? Ideally, you want to work with the Neptunian energy in the second house in a way where you can assert yourself out there and take your talents and abilities seriously and make a good income with your creations, okay? This is where we want to land, dear Pisces. And because Neptune is very destabilizing to some regard, and I think Saturn has already been kind of teaching you that while Saturn was going through your first house, is that you need to find your own self and sense of security within yourself. And this really happens once you get to know yourself in a deeper level, because once you have that anchor, nobody can take that away from you. Well, like, when you're sure in yourself, it's much less likely that people will like doubt you, because oftentimes our inner world is a reflection of the outer world, and things will change anyways, because Neptune moving outside your first house is going to create a new identity shift for you, make you see yourself much more clearly, which we love. And you might also really grapple with, the thing is, you're already such a generous sign. So it's like, I'm not telling you so many new things, but if you aren't already in some sort of healing, artistic type of work, highly recommend doing so during the Neptune transit in your second house, getting in touch with like your more artsy side, or even helping out. Like maybe you even build your own charity or community, because the second house has a lot to do with money. So it might be like you building up a charity where like people can put donations to saving wild marine life or something like that. Again, you need to be spiritually fulfilled by getting the money. Like you need to feel good. How should I say this? The way, like you need to feel good about the way that you're creating your life, using your talents and abilities, because then the money that is coming into your life feels actually spiritually fulfilling. Another good thing that Neptune can teach us is to like be less detached about like our worldly possessions and achievements, which is interesting for you Pisces, because you can sometimes be very detached from things already. Sometimes you can also be super attached from things. I'm not sure if Neptune will necessarily help you find a middle ground here, but it will definitely provoke you to think more deeply about the way you are detaching and the way you are attaching yourself to certain things in life, and where you perhaps need to detach more and where you perhaps need to attach less. Like, where do you need to take things more seriously, which again, most likely is your talents and abilities and getting actually paid for that in a good way. But where you need to detach more is probably, trusting people so much so that you don't fall for like scams and whatever. That's probably a good way. Like, just don't land into this realm where you're like over romanticize like getting money out of nowhere, because it might not happen, and like you need to take responsibility for that. But again, I do think Saturn will greatly help that, at least in the first 2.5 years. But I'm just saying this because this is like a general Neptune horoscopes, and Neptune is going to travel through each of our respective houses for the next 14 years, which is a long time. So I just want to make sure that I say everything that is on my mind and that I think is important. So let me know how you're feeling, dear Pisces. This is what I have for you. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye. So everyone, this is what I have for all of the respective zodiac signs. It's the first time I've been doing an in-depth video about each zodiac sign. Realized, first of all, just how much work there is that gets put into this, so I'm having so much more respect also for my own craft and putting all of this together. If you've enjoyed and found this video useful, please make sure to leave a like. It helps out more than you know. Make sure to subscribe to the channel to stay updated on weekly overviews, videos like this where I go in depth with all the horoscopes through certain transits. And I also sometimes do in-depth videos around certain transits in a more philosophical way, so make sure to subscribe to the channel for this. Also make sure to comment if, I want to know, how are you feeling? What are your thoughts on Neptune transiting your respective house? Are you excited? Are you terrified? What are you going through? Let me know, and I can also, comment back and everything and respond back to you, which will be super helpful and useful. And if you think somebody else might find this video helpful and useful, please make sure to share this video to this person and help the channel and this community grow. I'm also active on social media. You can find all my links down below, and let's stay connected. So again, super enjoyful. I'm not sure if enjoyful is a real word. I've had a lot of fun. Let's just put it that way, okay? Let's not make things overly complicated. If you don't know, I speak at least 3 languages, so my brain functions in more than one language, which sometimes makes me to say words or sentences in a confusing way, so I'm sorry for that. But I had a lot of fun making this video today, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Have an absolutely lovely time. I wish you all the best for this Neptune and Aries transit, and I'll see you next time. Have a lovely day. Bye.